much for the warm welcoming. This is amazing, and you're wonderful people, and I just want to have my studio right here. I want to move right here. Sophia just told me that I am the executive, told you all that I'm the executive director of the Fort Point Arts Community. This is a new job for me, only as of February. I got myself into that somehow. I'm a retired art teacher of 37 years as well, and thank you. I taught in Rhode Island for about 15 years and about 22 years in Newton. And so I lived in Rhode Island before moving to Boston in 1987. So after my teaching of 14 or 15 years, I said, I want to move to a bigger artist community, and rather than Newport, Rhode Island. And I just took a year leave of absence and decided to move to Boston. And I guess I can have my slides going too. Here we go. So I moved to Boston in '87, not knowing anybody, and I called one phone number because there was no internet back then to find an artist studio, and one person at the Boston Center for the Arts and Artists happened to be walking by a phone and picked up and said, I said, where are all the artists in Boston, and how do I find a studio? And they said, well, I don't know about, available studios, but I know there's a group of artists that have studios at 47 Waltham Street. So I ended up finding a place for rent there and ended up finding community there. But before that, I want to just talk to you. I was born post-World War II in Detroit, and my father became a builder. He was a designer for Ford Motor Company, and he did also design for Stinson Aircraft as well. But his father also was a designer for Ford Motor Company, as well as his brother and other relatives going back. So I lived sort of in this creative atmosphere, and my mother was very supportive of anything that I wanted to do from a young age. So I'm not doing a monologue. If any of you want to interrupt me at any time, please do. When I became a little bit older, my mom said, before going to college, what would you like to be when you grow up? I've always been doing art. And I said, I'd like to be a famous painter. And she says, that's nice, Chrissy. She called me Chrissy. She says, but why don't you teach art, and that'll support your habit of making art. And I liked kids. I don't have children, but I loved kids. And so I became an art teacher. I got my degree at UNC Chapel Hill, and then later at Rhode Island School of Design, and then I taught in Milltown, as I told you. So when I came to Boston, I had community, and I ended up finding more community in Fort Point. It was in 1992 that I moved to Fort Point because the artists had secured, because of Fort Point Arts Community, had secured artist living spaces. In fact, I want to tell you about the building that I'm living in. Some water. This is the artist building at 300 Summer Street. This is where I live right now. But before that, it was 249 A Street, a co-op that was one of the first buildings that FPAC started. They also did Brick Bottom in Somerville. So we have a place that's for sale for a creative. If any of you want to come and live with us, it's a beautiful space. And Also, I'm gonna just jump maybe over to this. This is our Fort Point Open Studios. There's 4 artist buildings, and it's all supposedly affordable artist housing. There are going to be 120 artists opening their studios, plus performers. It's going to be about 22 musicians playing in 4 different buildings. So I've had a big job since February, also trying to help an organization that was actually floundering a bit post-COVID, and it was kind of confusing as to what kind of board it should have, whether it should have a membership or whether it should be a paid nonprofit board. And the membership kind of rose up of the community and said, no, we want the membership to be involved. So I've always been sort of an activist in my community, and like Sophia was talking about how community forms you, but I feel like our place is a neighborhood. It is community. The art, I owe a lot to FPAC, so that's why I didn't expect to be president, but because I had the loudest voices about getting rid of the membership, that ended up happening. I went, uh-oh, what did I do? What did I do? So
what day and time is that event? The open studio?
Oh, it's October 18th through the 20th, and we have an incredible flip book that you can see on your phone with this QR code, and it shows all the artists who are performing or opening their studios, etc. And all the buildings are close to each other, so it's very walkable. So, where's my cheat sheet? Okay. I just told you about my South End experience. This was the first time that I had a studio, a big studio. Otherwise, all of us probably have had studios or workspaces in a porch or in a basement or wherever you can find a space. But I had a real studio. But then all of a sudden I was freaked out because I'd say, oh my God, now I'm supposed to make art because, when you're younger, you're inspired by a whole lot of different artists and you sometimes imitate them. I think that's what young people do because we love them so much and we imitate them. So I just started making my own experimentation and finally came to my geometric style. So I'll start showing you some of my slides here. So if I have this technique down, there we go. I finally sort of arrived at a geometric stage. I loved the Bauhaus, the concrete artists, the steel artists, the pre-World War I, and then the movements that were going between World War I and II. Even though I wasn't alive then, but a lot of the design in our home, the furniture, the draperies, in fact, did have a great influence on my own artwork. My father also was a builder, became a builder. So this is more orthogonal, and I love Frank Lloyd Wright. Yes?
What is the medium on these pieces?
Oh, I paint with acrylic. Because I mostly painted where I lived, I didn't want anything that was hazardous, like oil paints and thinners. So I used acrylics, and I brought a couple pieces here. I ended up experimenting and creating pieces that looked more wax-like, even though it is acrylic. So the surface does look wax-like. So this painting is 45 inches by 90. And so I think Frank Lloyd Wright did windows with geometry. He had some stained glass windows that looked a lot like this. So this one, I love the color black, and I decided to leave black out of, to test myself, to see if I could leave black out of it. And so this one's about 40 by 70, something like that. And I went from the orthogonal, more organized, and then all of a sudden I wanted to let the pieces free themselves and start moving. I move a lot, and I like to dance, and so I was freeing the shapes so that there was more movement, but I still maintained, they didn't go past the edges, so they were a little bit controlled, so they didn't get out of control there. And then, because I like black, I just did only black and white, because I do like black and white.
I did was it a couple days ago, I was counting cars,
Yeah,
and because I was just wanting to get in a reflective space, and I counted first black cars. So I was curious after how many cars, what would be a general percentage of black cars on the road. And then a couple days later, I did white cars. And in my brain, I thought about twice the amount of white cars as black cars, but I thought there was a lot of black cars comparatively, just solid black. And then I Googled it later on, and I was fairly accurate about the percentages, and it's very interesting. So black came up to me. I don't know, it's just an idea to keep myself in a good space in the midst of traffic and everything. So
exactly.
very interesting.
Yes. So, and for some reason I do like white backgrounds, but so then I make myself do a black background just to test myself, to break out of things, because as I was saying, that you end up looking at styles like Malevich and Mondrian, and those are people I love, Hans Hofmann, but I don't want to do what they're doing. So it's hard not to be influenced by what you like and have seen. So I call these mechanical construct because it's like machinery and the pulleys and levies and things moving. They still move, even though they're confined by the rectangular shape. And this one's on a card that I have over here. It's a more recent one. The one thing about I did bring a couple paintings. When you see the photographs, you can't see that there is raised surfaces because I use stencils and tape and very thick paint. Sometimes I use, it's like a sand that goes into the paint as well. This is a small one. Because I have trouble making small paintings that I think are successful, so I force myself to make small paintings. So, I mean, I love a painting that I can reach, and those are my favorite, and sometimes I think more successful. This one was bought by a residence in Boston. These are smaller ones, again, testing myself to see if I can do smaller ones. So, this is in my house. This is a friend's painting, and he's going to be open during open studios. So sometimes when I sell my art, I run and buy someone else's because except I get tired of looking at my own art. I like to look at other people's. So after open studios, I put the other people's art back up and take mine down. My studio is over there behind those doors, but this is our living room. I wanted to show you this painting too because I love painting on handmade paper. sometimes when I'm painting on paper, I'm a lot freer, or when I'm drawing on paper, than I am on a canvas. I don't know the reason behind that. Not that the canvas is so precious, but I think I do have a looseness in me when I'm doing it with paper. So these are raised. These have a lot of sand grit in them, so they're really, literally three-dimensional. And I wanted them to be simple. I was one of 7 artists selected for the new Green Line extension, and my work's at Ball Square Station. I was chosen in 2014. It took a long, well, the project, as you all know, stopped because of not having enough money. They already had selected the artists, and then it got started again in 2018. But I worked with the architects and engineers of the MBTA for all those years. I loved meeting with them. I was always nervous because they were engineers and architects, and and someone working there said, "Oh, they're gonna love talking to an artist. It's a break in their day," So that's where my station is. This is the Green Line extension, and mine's at Ball Square, the set just one before Tufts. And when it opened in 2022, December, I had COVID. I couldn't go to the opening. That all these young kids, I couldn't believe it, from Tufts were up at 5:30 in the morning, and there was a band there at 5:30 in the morning and everything. So I did go a week later with a mask to go see it. But it was a great experience. And when they first selected me, I say, "Why do you want me? I'm just a painter. Oh, I have never done public art before." And they said, "Don't worry, you can, we have people who can fabricate your work. We can connect you with a metal company. We can connect you with a glass company. And so what I did is I created 3 big paintings like this, a series. I often paint in series because the paintings talk to each other. I have a feeling when I'm starting to paint, but I don't know what the painting's going to look like because it kind of has a mind of its own, and it takes over. So, and deciding when something's finished is sometimes hard, but it usually tells you. But it doesn't mean that a year later I see that painting sitting over there and I happen to have some paint in my hand and that I might change it. So I made 3 large paintings. I said, "Gosh, well if I'm doing it on the elevator, do I need to make a painting that's as big as the elevator?" And then I learned about vector files, which all of you know about, I'm sure. And so it was hard to get on the vector files these things that look like coffee rings, but I wanted them in there on the glass as well. And I hired, from the money that they gave me, someone to help with that tech aspect. And sometimes I can't decide if a painting is vertical or horizontal. And it's horizontal on the Green Line, on the Ball Square Station. And the glass was made by a factory in New Jersey. And I had to travel there and they gave me a hard hat and took me on a tour. And it was just wonderful, and they showed me the whole process. And so I made friends with them as well. And this wasn't they did, it's GIC, General Glass International, GCI. No. GGI, that's it, GGI, yes. They do projects around the world, but they just treated me as equally to anybody else. They also did another artist station. Randall Thurston did glass on his station. You might know that artist. So what we had to do is we had to know where the mullions were, and we could, with the vector file, we could move a shape around. If the shape was in the wrong place, like right where the T was, and it would look strange, we could move one of my circles over, which opened up a new world for me. Like, oh, I didn't like that there anyhow. So move it over. Yeah. So this is the four sides of the glass tower. This is when it was under construction, and I couldn't believe it when I came around the corner. It was one of the people from the construction company working on this. And I saw my piece there and went, oh no, I hope the neighborhood likes it. They're stuck with it, because it's in between tempered glass, it's ceramic frit on glass. And it went through these giant machines that I saw at the glass company. They're gonna make another tower and maybe add another, the work's already done in a sense, but they have a placeholder for another elevator that they may be putting in, and they're gonna use my glass again, because it'd be strange to put another artist there. And so I had to go with a hard hat and steel boots and to get up close to see some of the construction. I based my colors on walking around the neighborhood and the colors of the houses. I took pictures of the colors of the houses, and I didn't want to do anything representational, like a lot of times things are representational so that people have that sense of history of where they are. But I thought, well, isn't this perfect? Ball square. I've got lots of balls and lots of squares. And it moves like trains move, it dances. They're called terjeté, which is a ballet term. And I said, this will perhaps help the public dance on down the tracks. You know, they're coming here. So another viewpoint of that. And they said, we have two map areas that we're not going to use. Would you like to have your artwork on that? I go, oh yeah. So so they actually reproduced the paintings, enamel on steel, through a company in California. And it does have a seam in the middle, you know, because the maps were sort of like that. There's a seam there. And they did put about me right here. So I'm hoping everybody likes it, because it's there for about 80 years, I think. So, oops, that was it. I'll leave it on that. So.
I just wanted to open up for some questions, so I'm sure you guys have a lot. Oh, I see hands. Just one moment.
It's less of a question than an observation. I love your work. I appreciate the movement that is conveyed, that you yourself, you move, you said you love to dance. I'm struck when we're talking about reflection, where you came from, Detroit. Your father was a builder. You worked with architects and builders to manifest this art in a train station. You spoke about artists, and all artists know this, that in our early days, we imitate others, right? And if you think about, there's a story about bus routes, but I'll change it to train routes to keep the metaphor going. So with the T, a lot of the trains sort of run on the same track in the middle in our early days. We imitate others. We sort of follow the line. And then the lines branch out. And as we learn more about our style, as you learned more about your style, how you wanted to communicate your movement, your colors, Frank Lloyd Wright, how that's reflected, Mondrian, how that's reflected, you branched out, but you stayed on the train. And that's what I want to acknowledge.
Oh,
And it touches me
oh,
that you stuck with it.
oh,
And
you're so
that's-
sweet.
It's very touching to me because it's not easy, right?
Right.
I lived in the Fort Point in the 90s, and it was a totally different city at that point, right?
Yeah.
And for all of us here, stay on the train because it's not easy, and we're going to be knocked down. But when we can gather like this and encourage each other, it's so important, that community that you're building in the Fort Point. I'm so appreciative of that. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I can speak loudly.
Okay.
I was curious, especially when you're showing the 70-inch large ones, how do you execute all the geometrics, like very square, very triangle? What tools did you use to do that? Because it was before the IT had stepped in.
Right. I have a tape, and I tape along it, and I make a narrow, and I paint really thick paint between the two pieces of tape to get a straight line. I have cardboard stencils for big circles.
The triangle.
And the triangle I do with tape. Anything that's got a straight line, anything that's round was a stencil. But the cutouts of the stencils are what's the ply? Yeah, no, it wasn't the thickest ply, like 8-ply. And 8-ply is the thicker one, right? 16 ply is less. I get those mixed up. But anyhow, I use giant brushes so that I really goop the paint on. And I put some molding paste into it. And then, so acrylics are kind of shiny. And so I treat the surface with a anti-gloss. And
But
it's
the
also-
actual exactness of like your rectangle and your isosceles triangle and your quadrilateral,
Yeah.
those are really specific geometries.
Yeah,
You have to
I just put the tape on and then like
Really?
this, and then I
just
cut
go
it
by
with a, like,
eye?
I cut it with an X-Acto knife. Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Mhm.
'Cause most of us couldn't do that.
And then, sometimes tape, when it's really long, it starts to curve. You go, uh-oh. So sometimes I have to draw like a line with a long ruler so that, or I just stand back and kind of eyeball it and keep moving the tape until it doesn't look like a curve. So.
Thank you so much for your questions. In the interest of time, I'd like you all to say thank you, give a warm applause for Christine.